Hi, friends. My name is Sarah Sampson, and I am just thrilled to get to share with you today a really powerful practice in restorative circles. I have used these circles in my practice as a social emotional learning facilitator for some time now. And I've used them with children as young as pre K and kindergarten, and they work terrific and fantastically with adults as well. This training itself is really aimed towards educators and towards schools, but truly, these practices are made for everyone that's interacting with a group, whether that's simply your family, whether that's your organization, or anywhere where you're simply gathering humans. These circles are really terrific for one thing, for creating community, for building trust, for going deeper in connections, and also for resolving conflict and coming to community agreements. So I'm excited to take this journey with you. I recognize that this is such a deeply human practice, and the way I normally do these trainings is very much steeped in human connection. So I appreciate your generosity and your patience and your curiosity for wanting to go deeper, even on this online platform. So let's go ahead and dive in. So just to give you a little brief overview of what we'll cover in this practice is we're going to go through defining restorative itself. We'll look at the history and the origins of restorative practices, and then we'll really get to the nuts and bolts of facilitating a restorative circle so that you can get out there and start gathering your own circles of humans, little and big. Yeah? So, just to give you an overview for educators in schools of what we look at when we're talking about restorative practices from a general sense. So, the root of restorative practices is relationships, and really truly believing that students, children, they don't care what you know until they know that you care. And so creating these classroom environments where relationships are at the center are really the heart of restorative practices, building these healthy relationships. Through these healthy relationships, we hope that we can both prevent and improve behavior that causes harm. We also hope that if behavior happens, that harm occurs, that we're able to repair and restore the relationships after that behavior occurs. We hope to resolve conflicts within a group, and then, of course, addressing the needs of the entire school community. So that's just really just a zoom out of what the potential is for restorative practices within a school setting. And then I also wanted to show you this continuum of restorative practices, just to give you a visual for how these practices are both preventative and responsive. So these circle trainings that I'm going to be doing are part of a series. And today we're just focusing on the restorative circles. So that's a preventative practice. That's a community building practice. Now, as we start to move further along in this series, we'll talk a little bit more about responsive actions and how restorative can be used to resolve conflict and restore the relationships after harm has occurred. But the truth is, you can't restore a relationship without a relationship. So we're going to talk more today about building those communities of trust within your classroom or family or organizational environment. So, some key ideas to the philosophy of restorative practices. So, like we said, relationships are really at the center of this work. We believe in creating a culture of belonging, that through these circles, both children and adults get to experience the feeling of being a part of a web that's greater than themselves, feeling a part of a community. And when we see these practices done at the very beginning of the day, particularly in our elementary schools, we see that the sense of belonging goes a long way when it comes to outburst and behavior, feeling like they are seen and felt and heard and a part of something. These children are able to show more positive behavior. This really also looks at teaching the whole being. You might have heard of this concept of the whole child, that we're not just looking at nurturing the academic side, even though these circles can help with that. But we're looking at also nurturing the social and the emotional side of the child as well. These circles nurture a trauma-sensitive environment. We know that a lot of our children and adults are coming into our environments with backgrounds of trauma, with hard life experiences. And so these circles where they are held in a safety net, where they can have conversations that are both safe and brave, nurture these environments where children and adults can thrive despite their past experiences. This also looks at really both tending and digging at the root of causes of behavior. So not just treating the symptomatic behavior. Restorative believes that behavior is communication. So when behavior is happening, good or bad, something is being communicated. So the practice of restorative really digs at the root of looking at where that behavior is coming from. And perhaps my favorite thing about restorative is it really views mistakes as learning. That part of our process as children and as humans is that we're going to mess up, and that rather than focusing on the punishment of what happens when we mess up, looking at the learning that is the potential behind that mistake. And so, of course, that brings us to this idea of restoration over punishment. A lot of times I've asked teachers when they've brought students to me with problem behavior is, do you want the child punished or do you want the behavior changed? Because really restorative is looking at how we can update the behavior, how we can restore the harm, rather than what punishment we can get to. Yeah. And then mindfulness and empathy. Mindfulness being we're paying attention to the present moment. We're allowing ourselves to be completely here and now with this group of individuals so that perhaps we can have a moment of empathy. We can put ourselves in their shoes and see life through their perspective. So those are just some quick philosophical hits around restorative itself. I wanted to look briefly too at the origins of restorative practices because I feel that it's important to acknowledge. One of my first teachers in this practice tells this amazing analogy and story about what it would have been like to live in an indigenous community and to have solved problems in the way that a lot of these communities once did and still do. So imagine perhaps someone in a community has stolen something from another individual. In a community that is restorative or in a community that would have held these ideals, the idea would have been that if someone created harm, if someone hurt someone, that they must be hurting. That hurt people hurt. So rather than looking at how we can punish this individual, it's getting curious around why this person is hurting, how we can both take care of the person who was harmed, and how we also take care of the person who's causing the harm. So that person who stole something would have been brought into the community, surrounded by their elders, by their people. And before getting into the issue or what the problem was, the first thing they would do is restore that person to their humanness. So they would go around the circle and they would each offer a good feeling, a good memory about that person. Hey, remember that time that you made me laugh so hard when we were on that walk? Or do you remember that time you helped me carry the water? You've always been so helpful to me. And once that person is restored to their humanness, then we dig into the issue. Then we get a chance for the person who was harmed to speak out, to talk about how they were feeling when it happened, how they've been feeling since, how they feel like they would like the harm to be repaired. And then the person who also caused the harm gets to talk about how they see that they can help repair the harm. They get to bring their own creativity and lifeblood into restoring the relationship with the person that they hurt, alongside making things right within the community. So these restorative practices are ancient, even though we're seeing them now crop up in education and criminal justice systems. They can be found through the indigenous peoples of Africa, the Americas, South Pacific, and they're happening still right now in the present. Yeah. So the 7 core assumptions of what we believe to be true, and these really come from indigenous practices. And if you just say them out loud with me, I think this helps us get it in our bones a little bit. So I'll go slow. Ready? Okay. Number 1, the true self in everyone is good, wise, and powerful. 2, the world is profoundly interconnected. 3, all human beings have a deep desire to be in a good relationship. 4, I love this one. All human beings have gifts and everyone is needed for what they bring. 5, everything we need for positive change is already here. 6, human beings are holistic. And 7, we need practices to build habits of living from the core self. And these circles are these practices. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the criminal justice system. So this is really where restorative practices got refined in many ways. So this has been happening since the 1970s, and we'll be digging deeper into this into our later parts of the series. But questions that are often asked in a restorative circle that's focused on repairing harm is: what happened? How did it happen? How do you feel about it now? Who did your actions hurt? And the big question: how are you going to repair the harm? What's your plan? And restorative in education, which is really our focus here today. So this actually began in Australia in the 1990s, and it moved from being called restorative justice, which was really a part of the criminal justice system, and restorative practices is really what we refer to it now in schools. So let's dig into what we're here to really dive into, which is how to facilitate an amazing restorative circle. So the elements of a circle are the introduction of purpose. So sitting down with your individuals, your circle, gathering them, and really introducing them to why we're here. Are we here just to get to know each other? Are we here to deepen our relationships? Are we here because something's occurred and we need to talk about it? Or do we have a theme that we're looking to explore, like gratitude? Yeah. So exploring and introducing the purpose and the intention of the circle. Agreements. We'll be diving into those individually, but the agreements are what create the safety net of the circle. A mindfulness moment, which is optional. We'll talk about some ways to do that too. Introducing the participants and their values. An icebreaker, which is optional. Discussion rounds. This is really where we begin to dive in. And then a closing round. So those are the elements of a basic circle. So the circle and purpose. What's the intention? What's the theme? This is really up to what's needed in the moment for that circle. I will suggest that with any group that you do a circle with, that you start very, very basic. Learning the circle protocol, learning how to use each piece really should be the first circle, is how to do this thing. This is where our circle purpose is learning how to be in a circle. And definitely, before you do any kind of circle where you're addressing any kind of issue or any kind of topic really of great depth, I encourage you to do a circle, which sometimes we call a green circle, or an introductory circle first. And the purpose of all circles, in my opinion, is for participants to be seen and heard and felt/understood, which, goodness, it's really what we're all looking for as humans, is it not? So the circle agreements. Okay, so this is a really important part of this entire practice. I'm going to slow down a little bit here. The circle agreements are what create our container for us to have both safe and brave conversations. These circle agreements. And I don't care if you do circles with groups 1 time or 10 times or 15 million gajillion times. Circle agreements are done every single time because it reminds us not of what we're supposed to do together. This is not a to-do list. This is a to-be list of how we're going to be together. And reminding ourselves of that is key every single time. So the first agreement is respect the talking piece. So the talking piece can really be anything, any object. I do encourage you to use something as a facilitator that's personally meaningful to you. If you're doing this work in a family with your children, perhaps allowing them to choose something that's personally meaningful to them, like a stuffed animal or a precious object. I actually like to use this maraca that I brought back from Bolivia because it reminds me that music is something that can transcend boundaries and connect us all. And sometimes I'll talk a little bit about why I've chosen this talking piece. For small children, in groups where there might have been some conflict, I do encourage using a soft object because you never know when it's going to accidentally, on purpose, wind up across the circle. So this talking piece, it really is to draw attention to the person who's speaking and to make clear who has the floor. So when you introduce respecting the talking piece, it is absolutely essential that the group understands that the only person who is speaking has the talking piece. Even you as a facilitator, the only time you should be speaking is to help direct the circle if needed. Other than that, the person who has the talking piece is the one who has permission to speak. When you're introducing these agreements, I also suggest that you have your group repeat after you and maybe even do a hand motion. So here I would do respect the talking piece and have our group repeat right back. The next one is speak from the heart. So you can repeat after me. Speak from the heart. So speaking from the heart means that you're speaking honestly, you're speaking with kindness, and you're doing your best to be vulnerable. And by being vulnerable, I do not mean you need to tell the group your deepest, darkest secrets, but I do mean that you want to open your heart and show your realness, show your humanness, show your rawness. And I always say in circles, the first person who decides to be vulnerable is going to give the entire group permission to be the same. So I hope it's you, right? I hope that you make the choice to be vulnerable. The amount of vulnerability you also bring as a facilitator will affect your group. So keep that in mind. The next is listen from the heart. Listen from the heart. So this is listening with curiosity and without judgment. And this is twofold. So there's the outer listening from the heart, which means that while people are speaking, I'm not talking over them or anything of that sort. But more importantly, the inner listening from the heart, I think, is most key, which means that while someone is speaking, I'm watching my own mental choreography, my own mental dance. Am I letting my mind wander to what I'm going to have for dinner? And that's not listening from the heart. That's not listening at all. Am I creating judgments? Am I creating stories around the person who's speaking? So listening from the heart really means that I'm being attentive. I'm giving my attention to the person who's speaking with as much kindness as I can bring. Listening from the heart. Oh, the next one is very important. The motion is what happens in the circle stays in the circle. What happens in the circle stays in the circle. So this is where we begin to create our tree of trust, where we agree that what is shared in the circle will stay in the circle. One thing I mentioned is that if something comes up for you in the circle and it feels like this incredible realization and you want to go out and share that, that's great. That's your story. That's your share. That's yours. But just keep in mind that other people's shares belong to them. So by no means do you need to be going out and sharing what other people have shared in the circle. Now, particularly when working with youth and those who have had conflict, you want to share this law of FERPA, which is that someone, if they share that they're going to inflict harm on themselves, on someone else, or the environment, that then that piece of information would need to leave the circle. And fortunately and unfortunately, what we find within schools is that when we open up these spaces for safe conversation, that these things do come out, which is a good thing because we would rather them come out than stay in. But be aware that within these safe circles, we've got to make sure that we're also abiding by taking care of our individuals within it from a safety standpoint. Our next agreement is trust you'll know what to say. Trust you'll know what to say. This one's a difficult one for me. So there's no need to plan or rehearse what you're going to say because that's really difficult to listen to when other people are speaking. If you are planning and rehearsing and trying to come up with the most witty, interesting, entertaining thing to say. So these circles are not about entertaining one another or coming up with the most intelligent thing you can muster. These circles are about realness and they're about connection. So the idea is that wait till you get that talking piece and just trust you'll know what to say, that messy, imperfect human thing is great, and to allow that to come out. Trust you'll know what to say. And the last one, which is particularly important for our little ones, is say just enough. Say just enough. So we're striving for equity within the circle, which means that everyone's voice are heard about the same amount, even you as the facilitator. So We're wanting equity. So keep your responses short and sweet. I'll give you a quick tip later for exactly how I like to keep my circles equitable with shares through sentence stems. So we'll get to that in a moment. So once we've set our agreements, we've had our group repeat after us exactly how we're going to be in the circle, there's an opportunity for a mindfulness moment. And like I said, this is optional depending on how much time you have, but I really do think it adds to the power of the circle because it takes this moment to allow the group of individuals to drop in together, to become present, to kind of shut out whatever they may have brought in with them, any busy thoughts about the past or the future, and really just connect to the circle, which is happening right now. So some ideas for some simple mindful moments are just to take 3 deep breaths. A 4-7-8 breath, which can be really good if conflict has just occurred and you're circling up around that conflict. This is a breath that paramedics and surgeons actually use to calm their nervous system and get the parts of their brain back online for higher order thinking. And it's done through inhaling for 1, 2, 3, 4, holding the breath for 7, and then exhaling the breath very slowly for 8 counts. So inhaling for 4, holding for 7, exhaling for 8. And that focus on the long exhale is what calms the nervous system. A 5-finger breath is excellent too. This is taking the palm of the hand and inhaling as you breathe up 1 finger and exhaling as you breathe down 1 finger. And tracing and following the hand with each breath in and out. This one is great because it also has this tactile response in it as well, which helps us to get into the present moment, into our bodies, and into our experience of what's happening right now. An emotional check-in, really brief, is also great too. How are you doing today? Show me with a thumbs up or down, just a quick scan, just a check-in, a lifting of the arm, a lever of how you're feeling today, or for little ones showing on your face how you're feeling today, and just doing a quick check-in are great for a mindful moment idea. Now, this round is not optional. This needs to happen every single time. This is a values round where everyone will go around and say their name, because putting our voices in the circle and claiming our space in them is important. My name is, and I bring. And I bring. So what I mean by I bring is not that you brought your iPhone or your bottle of water, but what do you bring with you to this circle just by who you are? This is something you bring to every circle you enter, every room you enter, just by who you are. Or maybe it's really something that you're bringing in particular today. So you can see in this photo a values round, which was probably done for an introductory circle, where students actually drew and wrote out the values that they're bringing to the circle. So my name is Sarah, and I bring curiosity. I bring humor. I bring an open mind. I bring brutal honesty. So you can really broaden your sense of values here as well as of qualities that you bring, human qualities. And with small children, this is a great place to talk about values, to make lists of values, to define values as well, so that they can begin expanding their vocabulary with each circle with what value they're hoping to bring. So a quick tip, just for a moment, because we're going to begin now at this part of the circle, passing the talking piece. So as each person goes around and says their name and what they bring, they're passing this talking piece. My suggestion for you, whether you're with kiddos or adults, this quick tip is going to be challenging for your group of individuals, but that when you pass the talking piece, you make eye contact with the person as you give it to them. Seems very simple. It can be very challenging. And what you'll notice right away, even for yourself, is how often you don't look people in the eyes when you have an exchange. I started noticing it when I would be at the grocery store and I was taking change from the person at the cash register, that in that moment, we don't even look at each other. We don't even have an exchange. So this is really a practice of connection, of looking people in the eye and for a moment saying, hey, I see you. I'm with you. We're in this together. That's what that moment articulates. So having them practice, and I'll even, when I'm facilitating, make people go back and pause if they skipped that moment of eye contact. And you'll notice that they'll get better at this skill, not just within the circle, but also within life. So once we've set our values, our names, we've gone around the circle one time just to introduce ourselves, we can move into an optional icebreaker round. So like I said, this is optional depending on the time that you have. This is a great way to increase comfort and to build community. And honestly, before you're diving into a difficult conversation, perhaps to do something a little bit fun and to loosen us up a little bit. So some great things that you can do, or really any kind of group game that you have in mind. What you're seeing in this photo is an activity called a walk in my shoes, where we're talking about different perspectives. You can do something called the weather report, where you explain how you're feeling in terms of weather. One of my favorites is something called one word story, where every person goes around and just says one word and we see what story we can create. Once upon a time, a dog chased a, yes, and you just keep going around adding one word at a time. Quick community builder, a little bit of fun, and something just to loosen up the group. As we move into the discussion rounds, this is where we're going to provide prompts for people to explore and respond to while passing the talking piece. What's important is when you design these rounds, and you can design these rounds as a facilitator however you like, is that you begin in what I call the shallow end. So you begin with a prompt or a question or a sentence stem that's pretty light, that's pretty easy. And then if you're choosing to go deeply, go there. These circles have the potential for that. But do not end in the deep end, okay? Don't end there. Get yourself out of there and end it back up in the shallow end. So if you have 3 questions, let's say, a lighter question, a deeper question, and end with a lighter question again, okay? That's pretty good choreography for these circles. And also, this is the quick tip that I think is actually really essential for large groups with shares and small children, is sentence stem your responses instead of asking open-ended questions. If you have a small group, open-ended questions are great. They really allow for time to go deep. But if you've got a group of 25 kiddos and you want to explore a question like, what makes you happy? That could go on and on and on and on and on forever, right? So what if we instead created a stem, which is, I am happiest when? And we encourage our participants to complete that one sentence. And what that is going to do is it's going to give our kiddos who might not even know how to begin speaking the first few words. They have the first few words to begin. And then it's also going to give our kiddos like me, who could go on and on and on and on and on, a container, right? One piece to offer. One little thing too is that if you start to notice that you have children who have a hard time sharing, and this might just be because they're learning to express themselves, but it also might be that they're English language learners or that they might have special needs. One thing you can do is that you can give them these prompts and these questions ahead of time and practice with them. So, my favorite color is, what are you going to say? My favorite color is purple. Great. So when I come to you, will you be ready to say my favorite color is purple? Let's try it. Great. So then that really gives those kiddos who might be struggling to express themselves in the beginning with these circles an opportunity to be a little bit more prepared and to feel a part of the community. Okay, so here are some sentence stem ideas that I love for get to know you circles. I feel I belong when I'm in the kitchen. I feel I belong when I'm playing soccer. I do a lot of circles that explore race, culture, and inequity. And starting with this idea of belonging before we explore places where perhaps we felt like we didn't belong is very important. I love these things like if I had a superpower, it would be, or my kryptonite would be, is this way of talking about these parts of us where we have strength and then these parts of us where we could grow. Allowing kids to open up around our biggest fears, wishes to make the world a better place. And a really powerful one that I've done with kids a lot, particularly teenagers, is I wish adults understood. So the sky is the limit with these sentence stems. You can frame them and work them into themes that suit your group and suit your purpose. All right, so finally we end with a closing round. So a closing round is really just a way to add a little bow, add a little sweet taste to the very end of our circle. It's important that we keep the endings of our circles optimistic. If you've spent any time with children, you know that they often relate their entire experience of something with that very last moment. So say you go down a slide 9 times, and every time you go down the slide, it's great fun. And on that 10th time, you go down the slide and you hurt yourself. And what do you now feel about that slide? The whole slide stinks. So we want to make sure that no matter what happens in our circles, that we end with a sweet taste in our mouths. And you can do this as creatively as you'd like. You can offer a song, a poem, a video. You can even have your group get up and dance. Be creative. Take just a minute, take 30 seconds to end with an inspiring quote or to show a beautiful image, or to get the group moving in some way. It is up to you how you want to close the round. Just make sure that you do it in a positive way that provides closure to the group. So just here is kind of for you to see an outline of how I plan restorative circles. So this is a circle that I've done with teens quite a bit. What do adults need to know? I've stated my purpose, which I will offer to them. I'll have them recite the agreements after me. I'll have them take a brief breath practice just to drop in. They'll each introduce themselves and state the value. They'll state, I am grateful for, as an opening. And you'll see here the 3 rounds and how I framed them in that really precious beginning in the shallow and going to the deep end and back up to the shallow end. So my middle round is a hard thing in my life I wish adults understood and knew more about is. So that's where they're really digging into something deep. But then I bring them back up again with I am happiest when. And something I wanted to point out here is that for the final round, I like to end with a reflection round, which means that everyone goes around and just offers one word of how they're feeling right now. And of course, I would love if every circle ended with people feeling inspired and happy and hopeful, but that's just not reality. It's just not the truth. And so really offering a space for people to give their honest opinion of anxious, tired, hungry, happy, hopeful, to really just see the range of human emotions within the circle is a precious experience. And for little ones, this is important in another place where we can start creating lists of feelings and emotions and defining them so that they can begin to expand their emotional vocabulary, so that they can unlock and be able to share what's going on inside of them, which is a very healing and important experience. So let's talk a little bit about you, the circle facilitator. So the circle facilitator is the holder of safe space. You're creating this container, and the group will go as deep as you're willing to take them and as deep as they feel safe to go. And that's up to you to build an environment where that's possible. And what I love about circle protocols is that the agreements are how you create that safety, and holding the group to the agreements is how you keep the safety. So what's beautiful about the agreements is if, say, someone starts talking on the other side of the circle while someone is holding the talking piece. You don't need to go into a whole story around what they're doing, why they're doing it, or even begin to even correct their behavior. You just remind them, hey, you agreed to respect the talking piece. So let's carry on, right? You hold them to the agreements that they made. Hey, you're going on a little bit. Well, remember we said that we'd say just enough. Let's remember we agreed we'd say just enough instead of saying, hey, you've been talking for too long, stop. So we can use these agreements to hold our group in a way that's gentle but strong. So those are very important. You as a group facilitator, I encourage you to embody empathy. So as people are sharing, watch your reactions in your face and in your body. These can give us away a lot if we're starting to hold those judgments or starting to create those stories. Just noticing in a real way and not just a fake way of you projecting or pretending like you're being empathetic, but really actively digging inside oneself to really feel what your group is feeling and to be with them in the experience of their sharings and their emotions. Alongside this is being non-reactionary. So taking deep breaths. I've been in circles where I've heard shares that have been very difficult. I've heard shares that I have not agreed with. But the circle is not my place to invoke my opinion and to insert my bias or insert my agenda. It's a place for me to open a container for people to share what's real and what's alive for them. So for me to hold this state of being neutral and non-reactionary is essential as the circle facilitator. And just a reminder that you are a participant as well as a leader. So you're responding to all these questions and all these sentence stems, and do your best not to rehearse exactly what you're going to say so that you're not this perfectly polished answer alongside all these people who are doing their best to be human and raw. Meet them there, meet them on that field, and become a participant right alongside them with them. That will really affect the depth of your circle. Some tips for setting up the circle. So I suggest, especially for a new circle, you'll see in this image, they've created a centerpiece. This is great, particularly for classroom environments, for new circles, of having students perhaps bring an object that's important to them to set into the middle of the circle. This is really a way to create focus, and it also is a way of creating a safe space, creating a space where everyone feels like they have something important to contribute, that this is their circle that they're building. You can also create centerpieces around specific themes. So say that you're doing a circle with a group of teachers and it's a group of math teachers. You might put in the center of the circle things that are meaningful to your conversation, like the current curriculum. So what you put in the circle, the center of the circle, is the focus of the circle. It's an optional thing, but it's a great way to take your circles to the next level of meaning. Do your best to eliminate distractions. So I suggest people not bringing their phones with them, even if they're just buzzing in their pockets. That takes us out of the present moment. I've even had a study with some extreme circling people who say, don't even bring bottles of water with you. Just bring yourself to the circle. No distractions whatsoever. And very important, ensure the equity of all seating. So you want to be particularly careful if you're working with children as the adult, that you're not sitting up in a big chair and all the children are on the floor. If you got your children on the floor, guess what? You're getting on the floor with them, or you're having them all in chairs with you. Okay, so no matter what, we want to make sure we're creating equity, and that equity becomes visual, right? Visual equity within the circle. All right. So just to wrap things up, I just want to say thank you for taking this time to learn more about restorative practices. This is really just skimming the surface of what the potential and the possibilities are here, but I hope it has sparked your interest. Some great resources. Just one I want to mention is a book called Circle Forward by Kay Pranis. It's been highly inspirational to me in learning more about how to facilitate circles and the philosophy behind them. If you have any questions at all, I'm going to be providing my contact information alongside with this video about how you can learn more about restorative practices. I truly believe that these restorative practices are learned through experiential learning. So if you are interested in doing a training, please reach out once we have the capacity to do that. And I'd be happy to show you in a physical human connection way of how to bring these circles to life. I'm going to be carrying on with this series of digital learning, though, as well. And our next video is going to look at creating community agreements, as well as restoring conflict with the use of restorative practices and circles. So thank you for your attentiveness, your graciousness on learning something so human through an online platform. And I hope that you have a great rest of your moment, morning, noon, or night. Thanks so much.